Newly released government data shows about 50,000 immigrants have applied for deportation relief under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, also known as DACA, since it was reopened for the first time applicants in December of last year. Less than 800 of those immigrants have had their applications approved since then. DACA approvals allow undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children to remain in the country. Advocates worry that laws to end DACA will be passed before the pending applications are approved. For more on this, CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez joins me now. Camilo, how has the Biden administration responded to the backlog of DACA applications?
Hi, Lana. Well, the Biden administration told Congress in a response to concerns about these delays that the delays in adjudicating DACA applications stem from insufficient staffing levels, technical glitches, limited biometric collection services because of COVID-19, and new training for adjudication officers, because this is the first time since 2017 that the U.S. government, Lana, is accepting first-time applications for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, which was created by the Obama administration in 2012. This was due to a federal court order in December. But we know that these delays are affecting thousands of DACA applicants. We know that since December, at least 50,000 young immigrants have applied for these protections, but only fewer than 800 of those first-time DACA applications, Lana, have been approved so far by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services.
I know, Camilo, those numbers are really staggering. 50,000 applications and only 800 approved at this point. And you also reported that several Republican-led states are working to dismantle DACA, with Texas set to be the first of those states to issue a ruling on the legality of the policy. How do they claim that DACA is unlawful?
That is the biggest concern for advocates and first-time DACA applicants. The program is currently under legal jeopardy because we expect this court ruling from a judge in Texas over the legality of the Obama administration's decision to create this protection for undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children. We know that Texas and other Republican-led states have argued that DACA violates federal immigration law and that the Obama administration improperly created the program because it was created through a memo issued by then Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano instead of through a former regulation that is open to public comments. So what advocates fear, Lana, is that the program could be shut down to new applicants once again, just like what was done under the Trump administration, and that many of these first-time DACA applications will go unresolved. They will not be adjudicated in time before this court ruling.
So, Camilo, as our audience is well aware, DACA already survived several termination attempts from the Trump administration. And in December, a federal judge ordered the program to be fully reinstated. So do you think that these states will have success in dismantling the program when it hasn't been able to be dismantled by President Trump and Republicans at the federal level?
That's an excellent question. Starting in September of 2017, the Trump administration began its efforts to wind down DACA. However, several federal courts, including the Supreme Court, blocked the Trump administration from ending this popular program. In its decision last year, the Supreme Court said that the Trump administration violated federal administrative law when it tried to end DACA. It did not provide a legal opinion on the legality of the program. It just said that the Trump administration's efforts to wind it down violated federal administrative law because the Trump administration, in the Supreme Court's view, did not take the proper procedures to wind down the program. However, this court case in Texas, where we expect a ruling, is not focused on whether the Trump administration could have ended the program. It focuses on the legality of the actual policy. So the question surrounding the case is whether the Obama administration had the legal authority to create this program that allows, again, undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children to work here legally, to be protected from deportation, and to access benefits like Social Security cards and state driver's licenses. Texas and other Republican-led states argue that no, that the Obama administration did not have the legal authority to do this. But the Biden administration says that the Obama administration did have the legal authority to create this program, and then it now has the legal authority to continue it because the federal government has wide-ranging power over federal immigration law and can decide not to pursue deportation cases because it does not have the resources to deport everyone here who is in the country without legal permission.
So, Camilo, as we've discussed in the past, the solution that legislators say needs to be worked on is something that comes through the House and the Senate. And as you know, in March, the House passed legislation that would put DACA recipients on a pathway to citizenship. What is the latest in terms of that piece of legislation and support for it in the pretty evenly divided Senate? We do know that in the past it has received support from Republican lawmakers.
Well, as you know, Lana, immigration has been a pretty elusive policy item in Congress for several decades now. But this Congress, House Democrats have introduced and passed standalone bills that would place some undocumented immigrants, including DACA recipients and other so-called dreamers, on a pathway to U.S. citizenship. And those bills actually garnered Republican support, unlike this broader President Biden introduced bill that would place the 11 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. on a pathway to U.S. citizenship. So those standalone bills for subsets of the undocumented population, including DACA recipients, have indeed garnered some bipartisan support, and several House Republicans voted for those measures, including one to place farm workers on a pathway to U.S. citizenship. But again, the Senate is evenly divided, and Democrats would need at least 10 Republican votes in order to pass this bill that would grant DACA recipients a pathway to U.S. citizenship. So it is still unclear whether that will indeed happen. And in the meantime, DACA recipients have to worry about this imminent court ruling from the federal judge in Texas. But I will tell you that the Department of Homeland Security told us, Lana, that they are working to issue a new regulation to codify DACA, because that is one of the arguments that Texas is citing in its court case, that DACA was not implemented through a federal regulation. And so what the Biden administration is doing now is actually issuing a new regulation to codify the program into the Federal Register, as opposed to just having it be a memo signed by the Obama administration.
All right, Camilo, thank you.
Thanks, Lana.